There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is an ending. That is the ending to KOWLOON Generic Romance. And I think in the end, I'm satisfied. Yes, it technically did play out as I was expecting it. It was going to be an acceptance of the new Kouji, Kudo accepting the death of Kouji B, and them all walking off into the sunset. I do like the fact that Kouji herself walked out on her own. She didn't have to have Kudo at her side. It was her own courage and her own desire to go somewhere, and him accepting her allowed her to leave there. I think that was a cool end to her story. Kudo himself, I think overall was a really interesting kind of way to end his story. More so surprised by the fact that he confronted a generic. I really didn't expect that was going to be the case, and I think that is sort of a good way of showing how Kudo himself has grown. Yes, it's sort of a mirror of himself to see how he was when he first arrived there. I love the fact that when he opens that door and Kudo is in there, there's an emphasis here on the date. He has his phone there, I think it was, and it said the date. The date was the day after she died. That was that day. This was a generic self that was just stuck there. Now, I do have a crazy theory. I have a crazy theory, and it would never be confirmed unless it's in the manga. Like, if they expand a little bit on the manga, or maybe the live action, they could go this route, and I think it's a cool twist, is the idea that I wonder if the Kudo that we've been sort of seeing throughout the entire series was a generic. And when the generic goes into that room where the real Kudo has always been stuck in that room, tormented by the fact that he lost her, he's always been in that room. And then finally the generic that has chosen to move on and has accepted his new self, accepted this new reality that she is gone and there's this new Kouji and he wants to finally leave, that generic self manifests as a real self just like Kouji is and is able to leave. And the original Kouji, one has always been dead. Maybe he came in there and his depression, he just died, in his own, sadness, passed away, never ate or something like that. Maybe that self has never existed, or at least it passed away at that point, or just disappeared just like typically the generics do. It's a crazy theory. It just popped in my head. It's probably completely false. And I think it's really around the idea of what was in that room. And again, that was because when Kudo first arrived there, in the manga it's a little different. I think if I remember correctly, when he arrives there, he has the ashes of Kouji B. And he spreads the ashes. He takes out the ring that he actually bought for her, throws it, and then boom, he's in that area. Then eventually he goes over to he's walking past his work. He goes inside there and Kouji in there and he freaks out like, oh my gosh, she's actually here. So it played out a little differently in the anime adaptation. But the idea here is that once he arrived, he noticed that Kouji was there and he's like, what is this reality? And he just started going on with his life. Like, okay, it's all here. And he just kind of goes along with it. It isn't until he runs into the old man that he finally realizes what's kind of going on here. He's accepted this fake reality. The moment that he sees her, oh, okay, continue on with life. But it seems to imply here that when he created this KOWLOON, when the generic Chera created this KOWLOON for him in his suffering, it also created a generic of him. And that is all created around this date. What date did it create it? It created it after the day that Kouji died. And that's the emphasis there. Because the generic that he created is in that room suffering this entire time. While he's repeating the summer, the generic self is remembering that day, and he's stuck there while he's moving on. And it isn't until he's finally able to accept that this is not real, he's able to confront that generic and say, okay, I've accepted it. Did you find your answer? Yep, I finally found my answer. I can't redo this. It's done. What's done is done. I can't undo that. I can't, all the things that I kept thinking about how I can just do this, maybe if I did that, maybe if I did that, that was this loop. What if I? But it didn't really matter in the end because this isn't the Kouji. I did like the explanation for why Kouji wasn't Kouji B. Why she was never the original Kouji. And it was really the fact that I think there is a bit of a stretch here, not from a writing perspective, but I think how it worked, it's stretched even further, is because, yes, he originally says, I think I figured out why you weren't like Kouji B, the original Kouji. It's because I never understood her. I never really truly understood her. She never opened up to me. We got a sense of that. Every single scene that we had to that girl, she's constantly at arm's length. She's constantly not getting too close. It feels like it. She just doesn't want to get too close. She's mysterious. But the one thing that was always hinted at there was that she's suffering. But she never says why. You just get the cues that she's suffering. The things that she says. And I love the fact that you can pick up on that. I picked up on it so many times throughout the series. You all know if you've been watching my videos, this girl is hurting. She's talking way too much about the now and never about the future. This girl is hurting, and there's an obviously reason why she eventually does something that's extremely painful. But I like the fact that he's acknowledging, I never really knew her. After she passed away, I realized I never knew this girl. And so it makes sense that if this world's created by me, created for me, it's obvious that she's not going to have really much to her that makes sense. She's not going to be a direct copy because I don't know who she is. But I think the stretch part, what I mean by that is that she's significantly different. We're talking personality, everything about this new Kouji is different. Even from the moment that he runs into her again, especially in the manga, she's acting like what we know this new Kouji is. She's much more goofy. She's not like... The Kouji B that we all know is very mature. She's got a very different personality to her. She's much more... What's the best way to put it? She's much more older. Whereas the Kouji that we've always known throughout the series, the generic, is much more immature, much more younger, much more free-spirited. They act very different. The personalities are much, much different. And so I think there's an element here where Kudo not only didn't know her enough to make a copy of her, but I think his own mind in creating a new version of her exaggerated his lack of knowing her. So the moment that this KOWLOON's created, he creates all these people. He doesn't know a lot of these people. And they're still seemingly good clones. They mention the idea that it's hard to really know somebody, that you don't really truly know everybody. And there's cases where we don't even know ourselves. It's emphasizing here that in creating copies of people, you're never going to be able to create the full self because you just don't know people through and through. But she's an exaggerated. Why is she the only one? The one that he was in love, why is she such an exaggerated difference? Because when the copies were created, I think in his mind he was trying to struggle with the fact that he didn't actually know her, to the point where he overly doesn't know her, I guess is the best way to put it. She is completely different because he just thinks, I don't know her. And then she's created. In his mind, he's thinking, I don't know who this girl is. And then she was created. So vastly different. Again, I think there's an exaggeration there that is very, very interesting. But again, getting back to, I think my only real struggle that I had with this finale is really around Kouji B. I think of everything, we got answers. We got answers around Miyuki, and that was really in the previous episodes. The idea that this guy has this desire to get revenge. At some point, he realizes that it's not really worth it, and everything kind of falls apart for it. He discovers the desire to actually move on with his life. He's able to move on. You see him and Gwen, they're finally able to walk out of there. Yulong's been waiting outside the entire time, apparently. It shows a little more of him in the manga, but he's been waiting outside the entire time, apparently telling Yomei and everybody to wait for Kouji is going to come out here. But yeah, he's out there. He's been waiting for him. We get closure around Zohei because he's accepted his new self, his absolute self. Yomei has accepted her absolute self. Gwen has finally gotten Miyuki to come out of there, get that acceptance there. We didn't really get to see what Gwen's regret was. That's actually something I didn't really realize. I guess the regret there really is around the idea of wanting to save Miyuki, and that desire to help Miyuki is what allowed him to see KOWLOON. That's the only thing I really think of. But everybody, we pretty much got full-on closure. Kudo has accepted the death of Kouji B. The new Kouji has accepted her new absolute self. She's able to leave. Everybody has answers, except for everything around Kouji B. And that could be on purpose, but I am kind of curious if the manga, when that finally gets serialized, maybe the live action might have some more details on it. With what is released of the manga, it is still doing pretty much the same thing, just slightly differently. Things are kind of playing out a little bit different, even though a lot of the conversations, a lot of the scenes are still there. But I'm curious if the manga might have some additional details around Kouji B, because that is the only sticking point that I have at the end of this. We don't really get a full sense of why she did what she did. And that's the problem. Yes, like I mentioned earlier, we do get a sense that this girl was hurting. That I'm convinced this girl was planning on, this is it. This summer is my last summer. I think she was fully convinced and scheduling that I am going to end it on this day. And it's the unfortunate thing that eventually when Kudo does see something there, it gives a sense that Kudo is seeing that she is torn about losing this summer. Summer's the greatest. I don't want it to end. I never want to go forward. I don't want to read the next book because I like to be in the now. She's always about in the now, never the future. People are planning what they're going to move to once KOWLOON is destroyed. She's not thinking about it. She's not thinking about, this is it. This is the end of summer. They're going to do this demolition. And Kudo sees that and goes, I want to give her something to look forward to. Marry me. Let's have something after this. So I think that proposal there from Kudo was literally him saying, here, take my hand, let's go to the next day. And it was and this is the sad reality of this whole thing, is this is the day before she takes her life. And I think there's a struggle there that she has, and the idea that she was planning that night, I'm going to do this, and now he's saying marriage. And I think she followed through with the idea of ending it. She had an opportunity there, but she chose, no, I committed to this, because she has this deep-rooted pain, and the only way to get out of it is this. She doesn't like it. She fears the future. That's really why I think it's kind of going with that whole thing. And that sucks, obviously, and that's the whole point of this whole entire story, is that it's so painful how that affects Kudo. The damage that does to Kudo, and an explanation of why he is the way he is all explained right there. He comes there the next day, and she has passed away. And he blames himself. He said something to the effect of, why'd you die? Because I ruined your summer. He blamed himself. Like, I did that. And again, gets in that idea of the regrets that he has. What if I did this? What if I did this? What if I did this? He wanted to help her. And in the end, he does this, and this happens, and it seems like he blames himself. The amount of damage that does. But again, it never really fully explained why she was hurting, why she was afraid of moving on, why she was so stuck on Summer, why she was so stuck on Kowloon itself. Kowloon's been rebuilt before. Why this time? What caused her to go that direction? And it seems like there should have been something in that scene with Kouji and the manager. It felt like it was purposely going out of its way to go, oh, look, here's this scene where she's talking to the landlord. But the conversation there doesn't really answer many questions. She said something to the effect, you're betting on your life. She has the pills already. She has the Hebenuma pills already. Now, we've explained already the Hebenuma pills has side effects, and it causes hallucinations or whatever. So the idea there could be the idea that either, one, she wants to end it with those pills because she's already gotten refills on her sleeping medicine, which they confirmed that stuff is not strong enough. You'd have to take a whole bunch of it. It just wouldn't work. So she's going out of her way to get this other pill that causes hallucinations, has side effects, and possibly could have killed her. But she has those in her hands, and she says, what would you do if you had an unexpected gift appear before you? The lady says, it could change things. It could change things for the worse. Is that really okay? And she says, are we leaving it to fate whether the ribbon gets untied or not? Yes, but I don't know which one is a win anymore. It's very cryptic. It's very cryptic. And I don't know if that's a bad translation or if possibly, again, they're insinuating something here. And I don't really get what they're insinuating. And again, a lot of it seems to go around the idea of the previous conversation that we've seen between them, which was a lot about gambling her life. And I think my theory kind of goes in the direction of, it kind of goes in multiple directions. The first one is the idea that, yes, she lost her parents. There was something horrible that happened with her parents, and this is something that's been hurting her for a long time. She loves Kowloon. She's comfortable there. She doesn't want to move on from Kowloon. This is like the peak of her life right here. And then it's coming down. Everything is about to be destroyed. And I think, again, she committed already before she even met Kudo that this will be my last summer. And then she met Kudo, and Kudo is trying to show her something, a future. And she almost was going to accept it, but then she chooses to end it just like she planned to originally. But what's the gamble? What is the gamble? Is it taking the pill, getting the hallucination, and possibly if she dies, she dies? Is the gamble choosing whether she chooses to die or choosing to carry on with Kudo? That's not really a gamble because she's making a choice there. It's not up to randomization. That's the part that I don't understand. A stretch of an idea here could be the idea that the gamble could be that she knows something about the generic terror and that this whole thing would have happened. That's a stretch. That is a stretch. If she felt that there's a possibility that if she took those pills and died, this could have happened. Again, I'm stuck on the gamble. I don't know what exactly that means. The only thing that I can think of that could probably make a lot of sense is if the gamble is, I'm going to end it, and the gamble is that Kudo is going to be okay or not. That's the thing. You're gambling with his life in the idea that if you do this, if you carry on with this, Kudo could be destroyed. But he could also move on too. Am I holding back Kudo? And I think that is sort of an answer that I can come to a conclusion of because a lot of what Kouji said when they were talking about understanding Kouji be or not, a lot of what she was talking about there was how she could learn how to finally become her absolute self. When he's talking about how he never knew Kouji be, She says, yes, I tried to look into her too, and all I found was the medicine. But then she realizes, oh, it's been inside me all along. Her desire to become an absolute self. And she goes into talking about the fact that she essentially tried to do all these things to kind of prove that she can move away from him. I went out of my way to kind of leave you and Kouji be alone and go do my own thing to prove to you that I am not her. I was purposely not being Kouji, doing everything possible to not be her, figuring that would be the way to prove that she is her absolute self. But then she says, no, not true. The one who can change me and save me isn't someone else. I think what she was sort of saying there is that I can't become my absolute self by proving it to you. I have to do it. I have to do it. But the question there is, what does it have to do with the idea of understanding Kouji? Other than possibly her realizing the only way that she could help Kudo is by leaving him. And that way was death. That seems very dark, but again, why is she bringing that up after wondering about why they didn't understand her? That's the question mark. Kouji was always trying to become Kouji. She finally decided to do her own thing. Kudo never understood her. She died. How could she die? And this creation that I made is nothing like her. In the end, like I said, it's puzzling. This is the only part of the story that doesn't necessarily have to make sense because that is sort of the tragedy that comes with somebody taking their own life. And that might be the point of this writer. The writer is going into essentially what people face when it comes to this kind of stuff. If you knew it was going to happen, you would have done things to stop it. It's not obvious. In a lot of cases, you're not going to understand why it happens because you don't know what the person's going through because in a lot of cases, they're not being clear with it. And that's what they're sort of drawing with Kouji. We didn't know. We just knew that she had problems. Something was making her suffer. And she couldn't accept Kudo's love. And in the end, she chose to end it. Why? Why? Unfortunately, in most cases, you just don't know why. Only the person that does it knows why they do that. Why they would go that far. And that might be the end message here. That Kudo couldn't stop her. He felt something there. He knew something was happening. And he couldn't stop her. And that's the tragedy of somebody ending their own life. You just don't know why. And you're full of regrets afterwards. Kudo, in the end, was full of regrets. And it took this long of repeating and finally seeing a Kouji that wanted to move on before he finally accepted, I want to move on. Seeing Kouji that is not Kouji want to finally move on and leave KOWLOON, which is huge because Kouji did not want to leave, that's enough to finally push him that he finally wants to move on. Anyways, did I cover everything? I feel like I just rambled. There's a few other cool things in here. I like to see that at the beginning of the episode, everybody was replicating things. It wasn't just Kudo for once. Like, this whole reality was created by him, but for a brief moment, everybody was creating their own realities. And we have that one little moment where the old man seen his wife, which, if those missed my video, I covered that whole skip content, which was really, really great. I think it was the episode that Zohei disappeared. That was completely different there, and they actually got into the idea of the old man's wife, which was just like heartbreaking. So it was really cool to see that. Miyuki seen his mother and he still walked away. That was, I think, like the biggest statement that they could have had here. Even though he's seen her, he knew it was not real, and he just walked right away from it. That was kind of interesting. The goldfish. Oh, the success. I forgot. Success. I legit thought that success was going to be Kouji, like a spirit or something like that. But no, at that one point, it's like, oh, you're not going to come with me or whatever? And it's like, no, I found my absolute self. You gave me a name or something like that. I'm like, okay, so it's not Kouji. The fish became its absolute self because Kouji gave her a name. I love the fact that they caught it later on. Success! Here, I have some water. No, don't use that water. That was super cute. Like the little fish there's like just flapping around. Success! He just wants to get out of here, please. So give me some water. I hope it lives because they're way away from town. I'd be shocked if they could actually find some water for it. But no, Yome, oh my gosh. That girl, I think in the end, Yome's like one of my favorite characters of the season overall. Just Yome just sees her girl and she's like, oh my gosh, you made it, Reikopon. She's like runs up there, just hugs her. I was so happy for Yome. Yome is such a fantastic character. I think in the end, having Kouji, Yome hanging out together all the time, Kudos can join as well, I guess. If it's even the real Kudo. I think them being happy in the end was really fantastic. I'm still sad that the young Zohei disappeared. But yeah, I like the after story though. I love seeing the little scene with Kouji and I becoming part of some travel agency. Again, going to hang out with Yome. Ken Kudo showing up. Sorry it took too long. I had to get some things put together, whatever. I think he kind of had to get himself together, and I think that's a cool thing there. But yeah, she's reading the book. I'm gonna spoil it again. It was a cute little ending to it, but yeah, I enjoyed it. The ending was great. I think overall the show was absolutely fantastic. Definitely going to go up there as one of my favorites of the season. It unfortunately can't compete with things like Apothecary Diaries, but it tried. But I had a lot of fun covering the show on a weekly basis. It wasn't like the most greatest performing, but I had a lot of fun talking about it. And I appreciate you guys as joining me with this whole journey, trying to figure this stuff out. Even though towards the later part I didn't have any manga to skip content with, that was a fun part of doing it early on. But in the end, it turned out fantastic. I think, again, my only real hang up is Kouji B. I wish there was a little more answers there. And again, I can acknowledge there's probably a purpose to that, and the idea that sometimes you just don't know. You don't know the full answers there. Maybe leaving it a little bit vague on purpose is the point. But we'll see when the live action and the manga comes out. When those actually do finish up and everything, I might check them out, possibly make a video on them if they actually do reveal something really big. But for now, we'll just wait. But I appreciate you guys checking this out on a weekly basis. I hope you guys enjoy my video. As always, if you want to support this content, become a member of the channel. But until next time, take care.